Last time on my new series, Home Video Recollection, I talked about a VHS tape of Thomas the Tank Engine I've watched so much as a kid. It was in fact the Welsh dub I grew up with, and that I would become so obsessed with that I became a massive fan. This time, I'm going to be talking about another show that I watched in my childhood in Welsh that I'm pretty sure you already know, Tecwyn y Tractor. Yep. Considering how that two of my videos featuring that little red tractor had become so popular, I've decided that I should review one of the tapes I watched as a kid. And that is this one. Let's talk about it, why don't we? And also a side note, I haven't seen any videos of anything related to Sonic Frontiers, nor have I read anything on the internet, as I didn't have the game when it came out, so I'll wait until I got it for Christmas. And please no spoilers. Right, since I've already talked about the show in one of my videos last year, I'm going to have a deep dive and talk about some of the episodes this tape has. Starting with a cover, we have an illustration of Tequin in some sort of field, on a puddle, wearing a cone hat, and what appears to be a party horn in his mouth. Beneath him is a seashell, which isn't meaningless to what's going on, as there's a reason why it's put there, and behind him are some sheep in the field and a pair of hay bales in the hills, wrapped up in black plastic. This was all done by Cerys Owens, the same illustrator who had done pictures for the books by Margiad Roberts, and are representing the episodes that I'm going to be talking about in this tape. So without further ado, let's get on with it. And please forgive me, I can't find anything related to that VHS, so instead I'll use footage from the 2008 DVD re-release, as that's the closest thing to the tape. So, because there aren't any videos of that tape to be found online, I luckily managed to have the second tape that my grandma kept all those years when she moved away. So I'll be guessing what the first tape was like during my childhood. I can't quite remember what the first thing the tape has, so I'll be using footage from the second tape as an example/recreation. We start off with a copyright warning both in Welsh and in English, and then cut to a presenter from the Planet Plant blog, which for some reason Wikipedia refers to it as Planet Plant Bach, mostly because the shows are aimed towards little children. But tangent aside, I've recently found one of the tapes that has the Planet Plant block as opposed to the other Planet Plant Bach tapes I found and watched. And I noticed that the name alone had some history. It was originally called Planet Plant, mostly because the blog had shows aimed towards children, but by 2002 or so, the blog had been separated by name and target audience by two different formats. The name Planet Plant now stuck to a block that's aimed towards older children, whilst the other was now renamed to Planet Plant Bach, a block that's aimed towards younger children. To me, this is very identical to CBBC, where it was a block that was aimed towards children of any age up until 2002, where the name now stuck to a channel that's aimed towards children aged 6 to 12, whilst the other, now called CBeebies, was aimed towards very young children. So that's a fascinating piece of history and trivia I haven't told you. Back to the tape. I don't know the name of a presenter who is probably introducing the videotape to us as we hop on to the intro. Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the people of Wales know this theme song. It is sung by the one and only Bryn Vaughan, as he had sung and written songs most of you people had not heard about. Here we have the intro animated in that plasticky late 90s CGI with backgrounds that are somehow drawn in 2D. We've got animals that are only birds seen in the intro, and Tequin himself modelled after the replica in the show, and let me tell ya, I don't think he can do that kind of squash and stretch in the show. Anyway, our first episode on the tape is Pen Blwydd, where we start off with the narrator telling us that someone on Tyvan Difyr is having their birthday. but we don't know who yet. Tecwyn questions Aranwen the goat about someone having that day, while the goat simply teases him about her having her birthday and refuses to tell Tecwyn who it is. So, without getting more answers from Aranwen, the little red tractor goes on still thinking about someone on the farm having their birthday when he arrives at the place where most farming vehicles and equipment reside there. He is asked by his trailer friend Tum Trailar and explained to him that someone's birthday is being celebrated in Tuvin Divir. The bigger vehicles and equipment then go on and discuss about their birthdays being celebrated and begin to argue about dates their special days take place, much to Tecwyn's botheration. This then leads to the big white tractor and Peter the seed spreader going on a heated argument just as Tecwyn leaves the scene. And I just gotta bring this up, but I don't think anyone else has. Does Tecwyn have schizophrenia? I mean, this is a tractor who can only talk to animals and farming agriculture that aren't sentient like him, and that also applies to the humans as they seem to go along with him and act like they can interact with them. I know, they didn't have the budget to make replicas of vehicles other than Tecwyn, so they just left them faceless rather than bringing them to life from the books. Great. Just as Tecwyn went on, still thinking about someone on the farm having their birthday, he was pondering about asking the animals when he met up with Caddy carrying a bowl of egg yolk, with her keeping a secret to the red tractor. We then see that Caddy is bringing the yolk to her mum Nanu to bake a cake for the birthday. Tecwyn then meets up with Motlen the cow and was about to ask her about the thing he was to bring up, but all the female cow could do was complain about her back aching. Tecwyn, a bit irritated about this, left off and thought of asking Moy instead. Meanwhile, Nanu and Caddy are still preparing for the birthday, setting up food and even getting cards from the postman. And as Tecwyn is still searching for Moy, he finally found him. And there's a piece of trivia for you. In the books, this is what Moy the farmer looked like. An old man with white hair, a lampshade-shaped moustache, along with a bald head all dressed in a brown coat. But in the show, he was made much younger as a middle-aged man and has been given a wife and a child that were never even from the books. I mean, this is coming from the same author who brought Tecwyn to television, and yet none of the episodes in the series are based off the books, with maybe the exception of this book. So it's hard to see that bringing a children's character from the books and yet not adapting any of the stories is kind of confusing to me. This is like if Britt Allcroft adapted the Railway series books into Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and only create original stories, but not reference the events of the books by the Reverend Audrey. Pretty strange, isn't it? Back to the tape. Tecwyn asks Moy if he's having his birthday, to which Moy states that he isn't, and then says that the animals he talked to refuse to say whose birthday is being celebrated. Tecwyn then decided to talk to Aranwen again and get some answers from the goat. We then see the party food almost being finished as we see Caddy being sneaky eating a tomato. That little rascal. Tecwyn then met up with Aranwen and was about to finally guess about someone on Tuvin Divir having their birthday, but since the goat refused to tell him about the answers, Tecwyn becomes impatient and goes off to talk to Karlam the horse. And we can see how beautiful the outside of a farm looks, all with very atmospheric and ambient music accompanying it. It makes the show feel less like every other kids show and more of a peaceful overlook on Wales itself, and I gotta give credit to the composer Geraint Cynan for that. Tecwyn meets up with Karlam and explains to him about the events that's going on around the farm, and nobody told the tractor about whose birthday is being celebrated. The horse, who is known to have a good memory, is also one of the animals to keep a secret and won't tell Tecwyn about it, much to Tecwyn's irritation. As Tecwyn is about to ask someone else, He is called by Moy and showed him that Motlen had a little calf, which meant that the cow was pregnant to begin with, thus explaining why she didn't feel well earlier. And on the topic of birthdays, the birthday is underway as guests arrive, and as Tecwyn and Moy go for tea time, Moy had a surprise for the little red tractor, which turned out to be a birthday party for Tecwyn. Not only was his birthday being celebrated, but Caddy too. Yeah, so apparently vehicles can have birthdays too, as vehicles who are sentient have been built can consider having their birthdays, and I don't think any other show had done that before. Well, I mean, there were Thomas books that had Thomas and Percy celebrate their birthdays, since no engine on the television series had their birthdays in an episode officially, so they might as well count. And as we see on the cake, the candles suggest that either Tequin and or Caddy is turning 6 years old, and after they've blown out the candles, Caddy kisses Tequin on the cheek, and look how wonky-eyed Tequin is. Boy, let me tell ya, tractors can apparently have some thoughts and feelings for love, don't they? And as it turns out, Aranwen was keeping the secret of both Tecwyn and Caddy's birthday the entire time, as she is very good at keeping secrets. Overall, this episode's pretty alright, as it's one of those tropey episodes where the main character has their birthday taking place, whilst the others pretend that they forget, only for later in the episode that they do remember, as they were busy setting up for the birthday for the protagonist. I swore I saw this kind of story in other shows, like in Will Quack Quack. The next episode on the tape is Bernai Maur, which translates to Big Bales, which is pretty meaningful as the topic of the episode's about them. It had been a busy day on Tuvendivir, and Moy the farmer finished cutting the grass in a field and had no idea what to do next with the grass. We then see Nanu finding which colour would be best to paint a fence. Moy then decided to put the grass in bales, and we got a cameo of Aranwen, who was a bit pivotal in the last episode. Tequin then had a little accident where he scared Nanu by honking his horn, causing Nanu to knock the pot of white paint over and spilling over Tequin's face. And much like some scenes in Thomas, I was a bit nervous of this, mostly because of a predicament that happened and that the music changed its tone drastically. And I don't know about you guys, but somehow this is giving me the same vibe as the Thomas episode, Paint Pots and Queens, where a similar accident happened where Henry let off steam, causing the painter to fall off and drop his paint pot on the Green Engine's dome. Even to the point where there's a similar joke where Cluck the hen teased Tequin and nicknamed him
Tequin, a tractor back, Gwyn!
as opposed to the Fat Controller saying this line.
You look like an ice cake, Henry. That won't do for the royal train.
Except the only difference is that Tequin gets cleaned off by Nanu. After that, he then sees Bryn the baler collecting all the grass and making them into bales. While I really like how Bryn works, picking up the grass in his baler machine and dumping the bales out, I really don't know what his character is. I get that he's known to be busy and such, but this is the only episode he appears in, and we don't hear from him again in this 65 episode series. We then cut to Nanu painting a fence in an orange-brown colour and doesn't want to risk another accident with paint this time around. Tequin goes to the rickyard to see the bales all wrapped up, stacked together from top to bottom. He then sees Bryn leave, and there in the field is Len the wrapper, wrapping all the bales in black plastic with his bale wrapping machine. And much like Bryn, no personality other than busy worker, and appears in this one episode that we never see again. It's really hard to consider these two tractors as characters because they're, you know, tractors, and yet they never say a single word of dialogue and are just, I don't know, nothing-ish, like we barely see them again. So of course we have Tequin learning how bales are made and how they're wrapped up, and at one point his eyes become wonky, Like, no offense to whoever was operating Tecwyn's eyes, but didn't no one notice this while filming this episode? Just as Len is doing his work as usual, Tecwyn becomes tired and falls asleep, and it wouldn't be until minutes later when he wakes up and sees that all of the bales had disappeared, and that Len had already left. Just as Tequin came back to the rickyard, he found Moy and saw that pieces of bran were sticking out of the plastic in the bales. So, Moy had to cover the holes using some sticky tape. He thinks of a solution to have something to scare the crows away. Tequin then has an idea up his head. He suggests that they should paint the bales with faces to scare the crows away. But wait! Crows are known to be seen at fields, stealing seeds and whatnot, but they are painting faces on bales wrapped in black plastic at a rickyard, the place where most crows barely visit. How's that gonna work? Shouldn't it be a scarecrow that's more suitable? I mean, I'm not here to complain as this is a show aimed towards little kids, but I don't get the fact that bales painted with silly faces is gonna scare the crows away at a place where bales are stacked and that there's concrete there. Granted, there may be some crows at the place, but they'll just ignore them and head off to the field and steal the seeds. And okay, yes, I'm aware that there's a scarecrow character in both the books and television series, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Overall, it's a nice episode showing kids how bales are made and that we see how Tequin comes up with the best ideas, even if some of them are a bit questionable. Next episode is Canavia, which is an episode about, you guessed it, shearing sheep. The day of sheep being sheared takes place and everyone is preparing for the flock being sheared. 2 shearers have arrived on the farm and have started to do their work as usual. The narrator explains that the shearing machines are used to cut the wool from the sheep and that they're similar to those hairdressing machines, which we all know is a comparison. Tequin and Conno, the sheepdog, have been busy all day rounding up the sheep and putting them into a place surrounded in metal fences. The little red tractor then goes on to see the sheep being sheared, and we hear Rala and another sheep gossiping about them how it feels like to be sheared. Whenever a sheep has been finished, Tequin and Moy would pick up the wool that has been left on the floor and collect them so that the wool would be for good use. We get a little montage of Tequin and other people working shearing the sheep, just as Tequin's about to talk to Dwynwen, a sheep that hasn't been sheared yet. The tractor gives chase to the unsheared sheep and we get a bit of stock footage here and there until Tequin meets the big blue tractor, and I've gotta say, that tractor has a bit of Gordon the Big Engine demeanor going on here. He acts so smug towards the little tractor, and yet for the producers to make him communicate, the big blue tractor flashes his lights as a way to talk since he doesn't have a face, like he does in the books. Oh, I just forgot that none of the pictures from the books can be found online. And tells Tequin that he has seen Dwynwen going into a hen house. Tequin asks Cluck if she has seen the unsheared sheep, to which the hen states she hasn't. Tequin then sees Karlam the horse and wait a sec, didn't I already see this shot before? Yeah, if you don't recall, this show mostly had a low budget where they couldn't film new scenes whenever Tequin talks to Karlam, so instead they use stock footage from the one episode he probably first appears and reuse the footage in not only one episode, not 2, but in most episodes when Tequin and Karlam interact with each other. Goes to show how minimum their budget is. So Karlam says to Tequin he hasn't seen Dwynwen, and Tequin goes on and is disappointed that he has no luck finding the sheep who hasn't been sheared. On the way back to the barn, he stumbles upon Aranwen with stock footage from the birthday episode and asks the goat if she has seen Dwynwen, to which Aranwen says she has and jokingly states that she has been on holiday. Just as Tequin enters a shed with lots of things inside, he finally finds Dwynwen, hiding next to Tum trailer with tarpaulin covering the top. Dwynwen explains the reason why she doesn't want to get sheared is because she is scared of the sound the machine makes, as it is very loud. Moy then has an idea to cut up Tecwyn's wool using a pair of scissors, much to the sheep's joy as those don't make much noise. To make up time for the other sheep being sheared, Moy used the scissors to cut up all of the unsheared sheep's wool. And after Moy had finished, Tecwyn now has zero trace of wool and can go back to her flock. So we have ourselves an episode with a simple plot with no conflict or important events whatsoever, as most of the episodes on the series fall into this. I'd say this is an okay episode for the most part. The fourth and final episode on the tape is Picnic ar y Traeth, an episode about a picnic on the beach. It's summertime on Tequin and everyone is getting ready to go to the beach and have a picnic there, to which Tequin never had one before. Tequin gets filled up with diesel while Nanu and Caddy prepare the food for the picnic. And here we have a bucket attachment for Tequin, which was used 2 episodes ago on this tape, where it's useful for him to carry things and such. So everyone, sans Moy, goes off to the beach to relax and have some fun. And this is one of the episodes where we see Tequin outside of a farm, as that's a common thing in the series. But just as they arrive, the 3 do their own thing as Nanu relaxes while Caddy rides on Tequin, waving hello to everyone and going into the water. A lot of shots of kids playing at the beach later, and we see Tequin and Caddy making a sandcastle. Just as they finish, Caddy shows off her mum the sandcastle they've built, with Nanu complimenting that it's the best one that's ever built. Then picnic time for the 3, but as they were about to grub in, they hear and notice a man calling for help having trouble with his inflatable boat. So, without hesitating, Tequin and Nanu do what they can to help the man, and just as Nanu reaches the man, the boat capsizes, causing the man to fall off with no idea how to swim. Tequin selflessly pulled both Nanu and the man out of the water, but while doing so, he tramples over the picnic food, leaving a bit of sand over the food. The man was safely brought to shore, and Nanu thanked the red tractor for his heroic actions. But as they went back to have their picnic, they find out that the food had been trampled over. But despite this, neither Caddy or Nanu is angry at him, and Tequin is thanked by the man for saving him, and are soon offered to have a picnic with the man. After they've done with the picnic, the 3 leave the beach and head home to Tequin, having such a great time at the beach. We finish off with Tequin breaking the 4th wall, winking at us, suggesting that he had such a day at the beach, and that's quite true too. So, after those 4 episodes, what do I think? Well, the stories from those episodes are pretty plain and simple, as they got stories that have basic premises like having a birthday, learning about big bales, shearing sheep, and going to the beach to have a picnic, which was 4 of those things that were represented in the VHS cover, mind you. So to me, I can't quite say which episode was my favourite, but to me, I'd say the birthday episode. It's got all the characters in this one setting, atmospheric music and all, and just shows what life on the farm Tequin is like. And yes, those who are super familiar with the English dub really do not get what it's about. Aside from that, it'll likely be the 3rd video featuring Tequin to gain more views, as my viewers are for some reason aren't asking me to make more videos, so I'm glad. Anyway, the next episode is going to be about a show that's produced in Wales about a blue jumping kangaroo who is actually an elf giving lessons to children about all sorts of sports, and we're gonna see what his arch nemesis is up to during Christmas time, to where I'm not into the spirit until that month, so see you there.
Tequin beep beep, Tequin. Tequin y tractor bach coch. Tequin beep beep, Tequin. Tequin y tractor bach coch. Tequin y tractor bach coch. Tequin y tractor bach coch.